Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless Now with my co host, Mike Grushin. And today's topic is the age old question around jobs versus internships as a teenager or for teenagers. Um, Mike and I wanted to cover this topic because, we think that there is two schools of thought actually. And as a young person in high school or college, we understand that they might be under immense pressure from parents, schools, even peers to engage in the job market. And so, an immediate reaction probably leads them to consider one of two options: either get a paid job or an internship. And nevertheless, the benefits of both jobs and internships for college and high school students can be really valuable. So, Mike and I actually wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about our own experiences and, how we kind of think through the job versus internship experience and what we're doing at Fearless. But I think it's important for us to recognize that Mike and I both came here as immigrants, and I guess we're first generation. And there is just across the United States, there are families that need to have their children work in order to contribute to the family. We were in that position as well. So my story is that as an immigrant, my parents were in the motel business, and my parents ended up leasing and then eventually buying a motel. So at the ripe age of 12, I had to work. I had to help at the motel business. And I was renting rooms and, doing everything operationally as a 12 or 13-year-old because I had to help my family. It was a 24/7 job. My parents, could not actually leave the property unless, someone was manning the front desk. So they could go to Costco for supplies or whatever the case was. So I kind of grew up pretty quickly from a huge sense of responsibility to help my family during that time. And I think for the benefits for me really turned out to be sort of honing my intuitive skills now that I look back, because I got to see people from all walks of life. So a lot of my human skills really developed there. And when I say human, I think there's always this people talk about soft skills, human skills. So that's what I'm talking about here. The grit and humility and all of that was jam packed into that. The other side of my experience was, while I had to do a job for my family, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to have an internship throughout college. So every summer, I interned at S&P, and that was a highly valuable experience for me, which led me to a job offer at the end of that road. So I have experienced both, but I'll pause there because I'd love to hear Mike's story, and then we can, get into the discussion of weighing the pros and cons of both aspects.
So my story is that at a very interesting age of 16, my family came to New York from Ukraine, and this was right around the time when Soviet Union was falling apart. Right, so 92 was Ukraine was still a part of Soviet Union, and 93 it was a country of its own. So it came it's almost 29 years. Not it's just over 29 years. So we came in the middle of August. In September, just an interesting, I didn't think about it before we started talking about, in September is when I met my current wife.
Wow.
So we did not start dating for 3 years, but it's an interesting date. So we came at 16, and we came as refugees. And we came and we were getting, if I remember correctly, we were getting $800 a month in dollars, and then some food stamps. And that's what we had to live in. And at that time, I think the apartment was around $500 in rent. And then we had $300 to spend on whatever we needed to spend. Obviously, we came with some clothes, but not much else.
Mm-hmm.
So very quickly, we had to find additional jobs, right? Obviously, we had to learn the language. So within the first 3 months, my dad and I started delivering newspapers in the morning just to make a couple dollars before school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first couple of years. So it was combination of delivering papers. Um, I worked in the summers. I worked as a guidance counselors in the shorefront and behind the counter person in a couple of shops, and then went to college. Within college, I had to continue working. So at that time, it was valet parking, and I had to have a job just because my parents were not really able to provide me with money to do the things that I wanted to do. And then I ended up with in my third year, my parents, like my dad's health was not great, and so he couldn't really work. So it just so happened by that time I already had a part-time job in software development. So I switched from part-time to full-time. So essentially, as of the after the third year of college, I was working full-time while finishing college part-time.
So I think, both of us have experienced hardship, and through that hardship, understanding the value of the dollar and understanding what taking a job at a young age means for your own sort of skill set. And we credit it now, and hindsight is always 2020. And I feel like we wouldn't give up those experiences because it's really made us who we are. But the question in today's age, with how fast things are moving for these teenagers, and parents that are really involved in their teens' lives around supporting them in high school and college, or may not have sort of the financial ability to support them, but just the wherewithal to think through and help them think through these questions, job versus internships. When they become a teenager, they want this sense of responsibility and financial independence. So I think it's the question is, do you want to earn money to buy those clothes or get that music by your favorite artists and things like that? You might want to go out with your friends on Friday night, etc., and start understanding money and the value of it. And there's a lot of sort of paths that they can go down, right? I mean, they can think about putting money away in a savings account, or saving.
Hopefully not savings.
Right. Well, college, new car, whatever. Yeah. And then performing those various jobs. So we've actually found, interestingly enough, as we were doing our research for Fearless and what it means for what parents are looking up at this time, like can my kids work at the age of 14, and what jobs are available or what internships are available. We are taking all of that into account as we think through our Fearless platform and what we may be able to potentially offer, to kind of think through this experience piece of it, right? And the other argument that we wanted to kind of talk about, so we talked about the job, and now if we kind of switch to the internships give high school students and college students the opportunity to work in a field that they're interested in. And I almost feel it's almost like a freebie, right? It's almost like you're working in this sort of safe environment, but it's sort of no boundaries in the sense of I can try anything I want, right? You have this opportunity to try. And if they get interested in a field, it could give them a leg up when they're applying for jobs, or really stand out in front of other colleges, or pursue their future career ambitions, or actually learn that I really didn't like that job and I'm going to switch majors and I'm going to try to go for something else. So, just kind of getting a taste of it is something where we think it's highly valuable from an internship perspective.
And the reason why we started with our backstories is not to make you feel bad for us, right? Or feel the idea was that we want to highlight that we did not grow up in a privileged environment where we had a choice to work or not to work, right? Like that was our background. And we always think about that there are many different families. So in this particular situation, in many cases, we will be very prescriptive. So when we say that kids should be learning psychology, we feel very strongly about it. And there's a whole bunch of evidence of why that should be the case. If we're saying that they should be learning about personal finance and investing and real estate and how the markets work, there are good reasons why. This is a very personal conversation for every family and for every family of teenagers to have and decide what is it that is the right approach for the family, right? So for us, Deepali, there was no question that Deepali had to work in the family business. That's just what families do. Mm-hmm. For me, that was also not a question. Now, when we think about our kids, and we also talk to our friends about this, so both of us will highlight some of the different perspectives that we're getting from our friends. Mm-hmm. I'll start with a very good friend. Very similar story. So immigrants did well for themselves, software development background. They also have a number of kids similar to us. And those parents, they're very close friends, they felt that it was a very valuable lesson for their kid to have some type of a hands-on job, like either being a waiter or working and flipping burgers or doing something along those lines. And the idea, which I understand, is this way that child will understand that $15 or whatever, $12 an hour is a lot of work, right? You have to do a lot of work. So when looking at sneakers or whatever the game is, that's X number of hours of work, right? So that was the logic, which hard to not disagree with. Mm-hmm. I think you had an example.
Yeah, I think the example that I was going to give is that, look, a lot of children fantasize about what they want to be when they grow up. And I feel, or some of, what I've heard from my friend group is that there's always going to be an opportunity for kids to adult and make money, right? So that dangling carrot of money is going to be there as soon as they enter the workforce. We're sort of speeding that up in this, having them work a job and experience that versus dreaming a little bit when they have the opportunity to do so at this young age. And, sort of giving them a test drive into a career, because that money will come, right? And I think that there's, again, like I opened in the beginning, there's two schools of thought. There's the grit and the hustle and that sort of, get that job and learn the value of the dollar versus, that's always going to be there. The earning potential is going to be there. Do you take this opportunity and take some risk and dream a little bit and help your child think about where they want to go?
And explore, right? So dream is part of it. But if somebody says, I want to be a doctor, mm-hmm. right? And maybe there's nobody within the family who was a doctor, right? So don't really have an opportunity even to talk to that person. Placing them in an internship or a low-paying job within a medical office mm-hmm. probably is a good idea for that child to understand that, yes, there's certainly a lot of, doctor does a lot by interacting with patients, but there's a whole bunch of paperwork that you have to deal with, and you still need to become a business person, right? Mm-hmm. as a doctor. So opportunity, that's what we're suggesting, that if the family has the means to allow the child to experience certain things, in the case of the unpaid internships, mm-hmm. maybe that's the right answer for that family. We don't have the answers. We have suggestions and we have things that we will do as for our own families.
Yeah, and I think, the idea behind our platform is that we'd love to combine a lot of these experiences, right? We'd love to give them challenges that really test their soft skills and their competitive spirit and their grit and so on and so forth. And you can do this in one way. And we're working on something special where they can experience something in a different way. But we'd love to open up the conversation because we'd want to hear from parents what's top of mind for you as you're having these conversations around the dinner table with your teenagers. Is it important for you to have them value the dollar and be in a job and gain this financial independence for the things that they want to do? Or do you think that the internship piece, the longer term test drive your career opportunity is the bigger conversation to be had? And it's important for us to hear because, knowing both sides of the story, we can tailor, a lot of what we're doing on the Fearless platform in that vein.
And this conversation can also be expanded to, it's not just about the internships or jobs for high school students. Like what happens in college, right? Like what happens when the teenager needs to have a car in order to get to school or in order to get to college? Who pays for that car? Is that something that the teenager should be saving up for, at least half of it? Or is this on parents? So just today we had a conversation with another good friend, and his position was that because his kids did very well academically and they were very engaged in sports, the parents chose to pay for the car because that was the reward, or it was also the ability and the opportunity for kids to concentrate on the aspects that were important for the family. So each family will have to decide what's important and what's possible. I don't know about you, Deepali. I took loans in order to go to college, and so did my wife, and so did most of my friends. And then we paid them for as many years, right? So some parents will choose to pay for a college education.
I had an academic scholarship, which was
you're the smart one. I got you.
No, but that was hugely helpful. So I'll tell you this: I actually I got into an Ivy League school. And
don't miss your accomplishments.
And I couldn't attend because one, it was expensive, and two, I received an academic scholarship for an in-state school, a full scholarship. And that's what I had to weigh. Do I go to this Ivy League school, or do I come home and help my parents out on the weekends because the in-state school is fully paid for on an academic scholarship, and I can come home and help them in the motel business and free them up a little bit? Those were the choices I had to make. I feel that I'm all the better person, overall. But it was a very tough decision at the time. I also had the luxury of having a paid internship in college. So, on the weekends I'd help my parents out, and in the summers I'd have a paid internship. It wasn't much; it was $10 an hour. I guess now, it's not much, but back then it was a big deal.
It was probably $4.25 was the minimum wage.
Exactly.
Right?
So I had $10 an hour, and my grandfather that was here from India was overjoyed. Like it was the best news he'd heard in his lifetime. And I think that, for me, that set of experiences and those tough decisions that I had to make really, made me who I am today. But it's a hard choice. And I do also want to point out that there are paid internships, and especially, as you're going through college, you have those opportunities as well. There are micro internships, there are paid, unpaid, etc. So those are things that we're, obviously exploring for our Fearless tribe. But this is something that we are looking for parents to contribute to as well, because I'm sure you're having these really important conversations. But I think whether you have to work through college or you're on partial scholarship, you have to pay for gas and room and board and whatever it is. These are the transparent conversations that need to be had.
So before we actually talk about the article that we're sharing for today, I think in one of the previous episodes we spoke about just a concept, a mental model, similar to us as parents who are busy and we have to find ways to optimize how we spend time. Teenagers, especially with all the complexities of high school and extracurricular activities and starting to date, and right, there's a lot there, and like building social connections, their time is also pretty scarce, right? That's what I'm looking
for.
Scarce. So we also have to think about, as parents, I believe, on how are we asking them to spend this time? Are we asking them to learn by working as a waiter or as a busboy or whatever? What is it that it's teaching them? Mm-hmm. Is there another way to teach them these lessons while also exposing them to something different. So a couple of ideas that come to mind: go to any small medical office, any small local store, and offer for your child to manage their social media for free for the first month, and have an agreement with that owner that if after the month that the child is doing a good job, they'll get paid, right? Doing a bit of web development and web editing, that's super easy right now with all the platforms like Squarespace and Wix. You might know somebody who is in real estate. Okay, what is it that your teenager can do in real estate? They can update the listings. They can, go sit in the open house maybe. They can print out things. They can distribute. They can send out emails. All of that, to me, right, and I would imagine Gepala will agree, provides more value. They're still getting paid. They're still collecting that money. They're still learning that it's not easy to make money, but they're still learning certain things that will benefit them in the future more so than hard work, than manual work that they can alternatively be doing.
Yeah. And this is all sort of future of work stuff. Social media is not going away. You go to a small business, you get their distribution list, you create a free MailChimp account, you're doing sort of, email campaigns, whatever it is. This is all stuff that's highly relevant to what the future of work is going to be. And they get a taste of it, and they get to help a small business. When I was in high school, I implemented this Adopt a Business program where, we as teenagers were going to these restaurants in the neighborhood and eating there and making a mess. And, it was on the restaurants to clean up after us. And we decided that for community service hours for our high school, we would adopt a business and we would dedicate community service hours to that business, and help clean and kind of keep the neighborhood in great shape. So there's so many different aspects that you can get notoriety and get written up in the paper like I did because I was an eager beaver, and it looked great on the resume, and I was helping my community. So just there's creative ways to do things, and I'm sure your teens are even more creative than where Mike and I are today, and I'm sure you'll get to learn a lot of things that are on their minds based on these conversations. I know we're a little long today, but it's a big topic, and we look forward to hearing some of your comments and how you think through this job versus internship debate at your dinner table.
And before we go, we'll just quickly show the article that we're sharing today. So we're sharing two. Like, this is a bit more of a longer article. So some of these things are very, as you would expect, babysitter, lawn mowing. Some of these are more interesting. And let's say we have a close family or a couple of close families whose kid is a lifeguard, right? It takes a certain level of physical health as well as training on how to do CPR. And so this is, from my perspective, I would suggest that this is a good skill. Now, the job itself is not all that exciting because you sit there and look at the water and making sure that, but it's also rewarding when you save somebody. Dog walker, retail, right? So a lot of the things that you would expect, but think about these jobs, like they can certainly do that. So for example, camp counselor, we discussed it as a family that this would be a fantastic opportunity for our kids to go because they will need to figure out how to deal with other kids.
Yeah.
But younger kids that are not easy.
Yeah.
And we know that these skills will definitely translate into their future. So Serge might not know this now, but he'll be a camp counselor one of these days. So online job is a very obviously base is general. So family business, obviously, this is what Gepala has been talking about, and yard work. So good list to take a look for ideas. We will also be providing at one point one of our lists of going to a local small business, helping with social media, helping with video editing. There are so many resources these days, and we'll talk about micro internships, we'll talk about micro bachelor degrees and so on, that you can just go to a number of the online resources from YouTube to LinkedIn to some other resources that will allow you to learn specific skills, how to do video editing, how to do social media. You don't need, in many cases, you don't even need to spend money to learn. All right. Thank you for listening. For those that stayed with us, have a fearless evening. Have a fearless day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.